Hi, Fidel here. I'm going to show you how to make a Neapolitan dough for pizza. Uh, what we have here is just 4 simple ingredients. We have flour, lukewarm water, a little bit of yeast, and salt. Only the 4 ingredients. If you put anything else into it, apparently it's not really Neapolitan dough. We will use some olive oil brushed in a container later. That just helps us to move the dough right out of the container, but it's not going to go into the dough itself. So we'll start with what we need to get started. I'm going to make 5 pizzas. Whenever I make 5 pizzas, I usually get a measuring cup like this, and I look at where it says 3/4, and I just go maybe about 2 millimeters, a little over that 3/4 mark of water. That represents 1 pizza. That'll make 1 pizza. So today I've got 2 bowls here going, and each bowl has enough water to make 5 pizzas each. The reason why I'm not doing it all in one, I'll explain as we go. There are a couple of reasons for that. First step is to take your packet of yeast. Now, a packet of yeast, really I could split this up into both bowls, but I'm not going to do that. It's only 6 grams of yeast. So 6 grams can make anywhere from a few pizzas to about 8 or 10 pizzas actually. But I'm going to use a 6-gram packet for each bowl. So we're going to get the yeast going. We don't use any sugar. In a Neapolitan dough, there's no sugar. There's no need for the sugar. The yeast can feed off all of the natural starches that come out of your flour, so there will be no need for that. So once the yeast is well mixed into both of these bowls, I'm going to begin adding flour. I've pre-measured enough salt for both of these batches. You can generally add between, I'd say, 4 grams to 6 grams of salt per pie. I go on the low end because I find the pizza gets a lot of saltiness already from the sauces or the toppings and things like that, and the crust still comes out quite tasty, so I don't worry about that. So I'm going to just go ahead and start with this bowl. This bowl's just going to sit. It's okay, nothing's really going to be different between these, and I'll show you why I'm doing 2 bowls soon. So I'm going to add a good amount of flour into here. Can you come in and take a look at the... Okay. We want to add enough sifted flour so this turns into a really thick batter. We don't want to turn it into a dough just yet. We want it to be a really thick batter. So I'm going to get a little bit more dough. Sorry, I'm going to get a little bit more flour for my batter here. Add it to my sifter. And continue to add flour. It's starting to thicken up, and that's good. Eventually it'll get too thick to use this whisk, and I'll have to switch to a wooden spoon. But for now we're going to go really thick, just as if you were going to make some hot cakes or pancakes, but even thicker than that. Okay, now we see it's really thick now, so I'm going to just incorporate as much of the flour as possible. Try to keep my hand out of the light so you can see the consistency of this stuff. So I'm going to add even more flour. It's working well. Okay. It's getting really thick now. It's not a dough yet, but it's somewhere between being a dough and a batter right now. Add a little bit more flour. We want to get this even thicker. Okay, it's starting to get a little too thick for my using this whisk, and that's okay. Now, if I was just making a couple of pizzas, I just set this to rest and come back later. But I'm making 2 batches of 5, so I'm gonna set this aside, and I'm gonna allow this mixture to autolyze. Autolyze is nothing more than allowing the moisture to get to every part of the flour, and for the flour to get fully hydrated. So we'll leave that off to the side to do its thing. If I was only making that much dough, I'd go watch TV for about 10 minutes and come back. But I'm not going to do that because I'm going to start on my next batch here while that one's doing its job. So I'm going to start mixing this one. A little bit more flour. We're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to look for the same consistency as this. So actually, I'll turn off the camera right now and we'll come back later. Okay, I've gotten this second dough mixed to a thick, really thick batter. I'm going to now set that one aside and I'm going to return to my other bowl. And notice the other one's gotten kind of smooth. It's much smoother than it was before. And it's only been a couple of minutes, maybe about 3 or 4 minutes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and switch to my paddle. You can see the texture is starting to change. That's what we want. This is going to be a really good dough. So we'll go ahead and start to add some more flour. We want this to become a really sticky, moist but smooth mixture. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to gently fold in the flour. You don't want to do this too fast because flour will start flying all over your kitchen. So you just do it in gentle motion, just as if you were kneading the dough, pulling something in and pushing it right into itself. Pulling it in, pulling it in, and pulling it in. Spinning the bowl sometimes. And every once in a while I go around and I scrape everything off the edges. When I finish with my dough, usually these bowls are pretty clean because I will have incorporated every sticky little chunk right back into the dough, so you don't really want to lose too much. So now it's starting to form into something resembling a dough, but it's still not there yet. I'm going to give it a little bit more flour. We want to get this to an almost dough-like appearance, not a dough. You don't want to turn it to a doughy just yet. Just keep working it like that. We'll work it for maybe about 3 minutes. I think this is the texture I want, so I'm going to work this for about 3 minutes. And then I'm going to return to my other bowl, which is currently autolyzing as this one did. Okay, we're back. I've given this a pretty good mix, but it's still kind of a little bit lumpy. I'm gonna set this one aside and return to my other one and repeat the same process. Right now this mix was still more like a batter, but you can see some bubbles starting to form, so the yeast is starting to work. As I told you, you don't need any sugar. The yeast will go to work on seemingly any kind of carbohydrate. So I'm going to add a bunch of flour to this, and we want to take this up to the same consistency as what we did with this other one. The other one got up to a nice chunkiness, but it wasn't quite a dough yet. That's what we want to do with this. Okay, it's working well now. Add some more flour. Get it even more chunky. Don't worry about getting it smooth. All of that's going to happen pretty much on its own. You'll be amazed at how smooth you can get this dough without overworking yourself. So, of course, you'll work hard during some stages of making dough by hand, but At this point, you're not really concerned about lumpiness. The autolyze period that you let your dough sit and relax and rest, that tends to smooth out everything by itself. And the kneading process that you'll be doing is not to smooth out the lumps. The kneading process is just to build texture. So right now I'm just trying to incorporate everything, and it's looking like a decent chunk. I'll just add a little bit more flour to get it a little bit. Okay, I just finished working the second batch here. I'm going to return to the first batch, which is pretty much the same consistency. So while I'm working on the first batch, this is going to get its second chance at autolyzing. Sorry, yeah. And so we've got this mixture. It's very nice. It's been worked quite a bit, so we're going to now start adding flour to this. Start bringing it up to becoming a real dough ball. But again, our dough ball that we're trying to get is somewhat of a sticky dough ball. We don't want something that looks like a normal bread dough ball. We want something sticky, and it's starting to get there right now, but this is still way too sticky to make a pizza. So, okay, so I'm going to work this just as I was before. At some point, when this gets too hard to work with the wooden spoon, I will start to use my hand, but that's not coming anytime soon. So we're gonna work this, and we're gonna need some more flour. So more flour. Continue to work this. Every once in a while, I'll have to scrape my spoon and get some of that dough back off of it and back into the mixture. And I continue to scrape my sides so I don't lose any product. Remember, I kind of measured out water in the beginning because I want to make 5 pies out of this, roughly 300 grams, but I usually measured somewhere between 280 to 300, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but roughly about that much. So if I do a good job incorporating all of my materials here, I'll get just that. So I'll work on this for a while, and then I'm going to do the same with this one, with the second batch, and each one's going to get some relaxing time while I'm working on the other one. So I'm going to work on this for probably another 4 minutes, and we'll be back after that. Okay, I've started working these and adding some more flour to them, and they're really getting thicker now, and it's starting to get harder and harder to work with this spoon, but I'm still going to force the issue, pulling stuff in and pushing it down into itself. This is the best way I know how to replicate the action of a good dough hook. It works well, but it just works a little bit slower, but that's okay. Start to get an idea of how your dough textures, and this is really starting to build those pockets where when the gases come out from your yeast eating all the carbohydrates, then that gas is going to fill up the little pockets that you're creating by doing all of this. So this has become quite a pretty nice dough ball. It's not dry, it's still pretty wet. We're going to dry it out a little bit, but not all that much. But for now, I'm going to give this a good workout, and I'm going to return to the other one and give that another workout for about maybe just 3 minutes. It doesn't need that much. And actually, the more you let your dough autolyze and relax between kneads, the stronger the texture is going to be. And when you're making pizza, the last thing you want is, while you're stretching your dough, is to have a bunch of holes in your dough. So you don't want to break your dough. You want your dough to be strong enough to support everything you put on it and to get in the oven without breaking. So that's what you're doing by giving it those rests. Okay, return to the other batch, and starting to turn this into the dough ball that I want it to become. So I've been adding flour, starting to get it to look more and more chunky, a little more drier. But remember, we want to end up with a nice wet dough, not a chunk of wetness, but we want plenty of moisture. The more moisture you have in your dough, of course, that steam that is created when your pizza dough hits a hot surface is going to create a really nice bubbly crust. And that's pretty much what a classic Neapolitan dough is. But we still want the dough to be manageable enough to be able to stretch and to sit on a surface long enough for you to top it without it sticking to the surface right away. We'll probably get into that stuff on another video, but for now we just want to get this dough working. As you can see, it is probably too thick for me now to work with my hands. I mean with the paddle, so I'm gonna have to start using my hands next. Same goes for this one, because I've brought that one to pretty much the same texture. So I'm gonna let this one rest, and again it's gonna autolyze, and all those little pockets where there might be some flour that is still not wet, during the autolyze it will get wet, and we'll be back soon. Okay, going back to batch number 1, what we're going to do is we're going to turn this into a really thicker ball, and we're going to transfer it over there to work with. You should probably remove any jewelry you have on, because you're going to be using both hands. At this stage we're going to add the salt. I pre-measured 4 grams of salt per pie, and this is 5 pies. So this is roughly 30, what is it, 36? 17? Oh, 17 grams. 17 grams of salt. No, this is not, oh yeah, right, this is 17. For 10 would be 30, 34. This is 17. Forgive my bad math. So I'm going to add the salt. I'm going to work in the salt. You notice our dough has gotten really smooth. This is beautiful. We want to work it enough so that salt doesn't stay in one spot. I probably should have sprinkled it a little bit more, but it doesn't really matter. This is going to get worked enough to where the salt's going to get distributed fairly evenly, or thoroughly, I should say. It will get that, because it's going to get a good working right now. So I'm going to work on this dough like this just a little bit. I'm going to transfer it over there to a surface and then start working with it with my hands. It's probably still slightly too sticky to work with my hands directly, so I'm going to start really adding flour over there. So see what we can do. So I'm going to add some flour here first, and add a little bit more flour. Okay, and we're gonna go on to the other surface over there now and get ready to work with the hands. So I'm gonna clean off my wooden paddle here. Make sure I get all the product. If it doesn't drop into this batch, you know, I'll get it in the other batch. So get off there. Okay. I'm going to be using this one, the scraper, to help me get everything out of here. And start using my hands. Okay. Okay, so let's go on and work the other surface now. Okay, hopefully the lighting's okay. You can see what we have. It's a really moist, soft piece of dough. If there wasn't that flour on it, it'd be sticking to my hand, so don't let it fool you. It is very, very sticky right now. But at this point, I'm going to flour my hand. I'm going to try to use my right hand only, and I'm going to start scraping off the edges, because I want all of this product to be in the dough. I'm going to start folding it into itself. Now notice without the spoon, I can get a lot more action going here. But I'm using just my fingers. It's not sticking too badly, but I know it's still sticky. Okay, I'm going to start scraping a little bit more. Now, even if you use an electric mixer, probably about this point is when you actually would or should use your hands. At this point, this is where if you just keep adding flour, the dough ball is just going to ride right up your dough mixer on the hook, and it's not going to get worked. It's just going to go for a ride, and you don't want to give your dough ball a ride. You want to work your dough ball. So, okay, now it seems like it's getting enough flour. I can start using the heel here. So I'm going to lift up the dough and push down with the heel of my hand. A lot of people feel more comfortable doing this right on a flat surface. This is a stainless steel surface. I can start doing it there, but I'm still concerned about getting all this extra material in there. So I'm going to just continue to work it here. It's very soft. Every once in a while you can flip it around. Gather all the extra material and keep working it in. Eventually this will be as clean as I can get it, and everything will be in there. Okay. If you feel a sticky spot, turn it upside down so it picks up those crumbs, and then flip it right back on itself. Get the crumbs in. It's starting to feel like it's going to stick to my hand, so I'm going to add even more flour. Okay, it looks like I've got pretty much all the product worked in. There's just some loose flour which will get worked in eventually, so. And just keep working the dough. Okay, it's looking pretty good. I know it's still wet because I can feel its stickiness. So we're close to done with this ball for the day, but what we're going to do is we're going to let this relax on the counter here. I'm going to put enough flour here for the dough ball not to stick too much, and I'm going to turn that right there, and I'm going to let that relax. I'm going to cover it like that too, and I'm going to do the same to the other dough ball. Okay, I have two dough balls resting here. This one just started its rest. This one's been resting for about 5-6 minutes. Again, resting, letting your pizza dough rest. That's what does all the magic. So it continues to smooth out your dough, gives you something really smooth to work with. Next thing you're going to need is something like this, a dough scraper, because your dough will get stuck on things. Okay. We're still a little more sticky than we want to be, so we're going to need and incorporate some of this surface flour, and we don't want to incorporate too much at one time, because if you incorporate too much at one time, it just becomes a dry lump. When you need some, you kind of brush your dough ball against some of the flour, or kind of gently bring some, lightly flour your hands and keep working. Okay, we're going to get to, you can get to a point where you're smoothly bringing the dough in, pushing it in, and pushing it down. It's starting to get sticky on me, so I'm going to just lightly flour my hand and lightly flour the dough ball. So I'm pulling it in and pushing it into itself, pushing it into itself. I'll do this for about another 4 minutes or so. But, and after I finish that, actually I'm going to show you a little something what I'm going to be doing afterwards, because this is pretty much the final step. Let's say you were going to, well, put it this way, okay, when your dough ball's finished, it's going to need time to actually mature and rise and become, you know, every bit of a pizza dough that you want. Right now it's still a little bit sticky. I'm going to try to get it to the texture that it needs to be. Not too sticky, but not too dry. It's looking like it's getting right where I want it to be, really close. It's still slightly sticky. Flour. Every time I feel it getting a little too sticky, I'll give it a little work. Okay. Still a little sticky. That's good. It means you haven't dried out your dough ball. Okay, so okay, I think about this point, this is about all I can do with this dough ball. If I continue to work it, it's going to get sticky again, and that's good. But I want to stop about this point. And next thing I'm going to do is, if you have a Tupperware container that's big enough to hold this whole lump, then brush it lightly with a brush like this. And sorry about my kitchen, I got a bunch of things going on here, but brush it like this with a little bit of olive oil all over the container, and make sure that the entire surface of this has a little bit of olive oil brushed on it as well. And you plop it in there and you let it rest. I recommend letting it rest for at least 24 hours. You can get away with 12 hours, and it's still good dough, even if you let it rest for 4 hours. You don't necessarily have to punch it down unless you think, wow, this thing's exploding. It's gonna go way out of my Tupperware. In that case, you're gonna learn that you need bigger Tupperware. If I put this in a container, I want something that's at least 3 times its size, and it should be safe. You don't need to punch it down like they always say, is because the day that you're ready to make your pizzas, you're going to pull your dough out, you're going to slop it right back on this same surface, you're going to portion it out something like this. Get some portions, I zero out my scale, and I start adding pieces and try to bring it up to about 280 or 290 grams. If it's there, oh, it's still a little too sticky, but that's going to come when we do our final hand knead. So we're about 265, like that, a little bit more. Now, even though you're still going to be sticky, we got 293. This is perfect. I pull this out and I start working it into itself, and we'll add. At this point, it's safe to use a little bit more flour. You start working it into itself like this, and just don't worry about using flour. Use it as you feel it's getting sticky. And at this point, you'll be getting a nice ball. You keep folding it in on itself. In Italy, they roll it around. They're really good at doing something like that. but you can get better action like this if you're not skilled with that. So just keep folding it in on itself. Eventually it's going to get to a point where you feel it's semi-sticky but not dry. When you feel that semi-stickiness but not dry, and you're not really adding more flour to it, that's about where you want to stop with that. See, this is something you're going to be doing on the next day. I'm showing it to you now. This would be your pizza day. You want it semi-sticky to where if you were to hold on to it for a long time, it would stick. But right now, this looks sticky. This looks sticky and wet, but not dangerous to work with. Right there, I think that would be the perfect dough. If I put that down here, yeah, it's sticky, but it's going to come up. That's fine. I'm going to weigh that dough ball. I don't know, for some reason it's 189 now, even though I thought I added some flour to it, but that's still fine. It's wet, sticky, but we can work with it. That's what you want as a final product that you're going to, again, lightly flour and push out and make your pizza. That is a Neapolitan pizza dough. I just showed you this right now, but this is going right back into my mixture because this is going to rest overnight. We're having pizza for dinner tomorrow night, so tonight I'm just going to finish off this batch and set them into my containers as I told you about. And that's a Neapolitan dough, classic Neapolitan dough. No sugar, no other additives, just flour, salt, water, and yeast. Okay, that's it for today.